In June, your lawn was growing fast and forgiving small mistakes. In July, it stops forgiving. The soil temperature is higher, the air holds less moisture, and the grass plant switches from growth mode into pure survival mode. That single shift changes almost every decision you make outside for the next 6 or 7 weeks. The mistake most people make is treating July like an extension of June, just hotter. Same mowing height, same watering pattern, same fertilizer bag from the shed. But grass under heat stress behaves nothing like grass under a growth spurt. It pulls energy away from leaf production and pushes it down into the roots just to stay alive. Push it the wrong way during this period and you're not slowing growth, you're damaging a plant that's already running on a deficit. This is also the month where small problems stop staying small. A patch that was thin in June turns brown by the middle of July if nobody touches it. There are 5 things that matter most this month, and unlike June, getting even one of them wrong can cost you the whole lawn, not just slow it down. Before we get into it, if you want a complete system for cutting your lawn care costs without sacrificing results, the book linked in the description and pinned in the comments covers everything about the lawn. Our readers are saving an average of $1,000 a year in lawn care costs. Every video here is built around the same goal: spend less and get a better lawn. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Now let's get back to the video. The instinct in July is to mow the same way you did in spring, just maybe a little less often since growth has slowed. That instinct is wrong in a specific way. Growth slowing down doesn't mean the grass needs less protection, it means the grass has less reserve energy to recover from a bad cut. Raise your mowing height before the heat really sets in, not after you've already noticed stress. 3 to 4 inches is the target for most cool season lawns, and during a serious heat wave, going even a ½ inch to a full inch higher than that isn't overkill, it's protection. Taller blades shade the soil surface, which slows evaporation and keeps the root zone several degrees cooler than bare or closely cut ground. That difference in soil temperature is often what separates a lawn that holds its color through July and one that goes crispy by the second week. The 1/3 rule still applies and matters more now than ever. Never remove more than 1/3 of the blade height in a single cut. If you let the lawn get away from you for 2 weeks and then try to bring it back down in one pass, you're scalping a plant that's already under heat stress, and it will show you exactly how much it didn't appreciate that within a few days through yellowing and slowed recovery. Timing of the mow matters as much as the height. Avoid cutting in the middle of the day when temperatures are at their peak. Early morning after the dew has dried, or evening once the sun has dropped, puts far less stress on the plant than a midday cut under full sun. If your lawn is dry and showing signs of drought stress, hold off on mowing entirely until you've watered or rain has come through. Mowing a drought-stressed lawn compounds the damage because the grass has no surplus energy to repair the cut. A sharp blade is non-negotiable in July. A dull blade tears the grass tip instead of slicing it cleanly, and a torn tip loses moisture faster and opens the door to disease, which is exactly the kind of compounding problem you don't want during the hottest stretch of the year. If you haven't sharpened your mower blade since spring, do it before your next cut. Leave the clippings on the lawn instead of bagging them. In July, those clippings break down fast in the heat and act as a light layer of mulch, helping the soil hold moisture a little longer between waterings. The only reason to bag is if the lawn got long enough that clippings are clumping and smothering the grass underneath, which shouldn't happen if you're mowing at the right frequency. This is the single most common way people accidentally damage their lawn in July, and it usually comes from good intentions. The grass looks a little dry, so the sprinkler goes on for 10 or 15 minutes every day or two. The surface looks better almost immediately, which feels like proof it's working. But that kind of light, frequent watering only wets the top inch of soil. It never reaches deep enough to support the root system, and over time it actually trains roots to stay shallow, since roots grow toward the moisture they can reach. Shallow roots are catastrophic in July heat. The moment there's a stretch without rain or watering, that lawn has nothing to fall back on and goes from green to brown in a matter of days. The fix is watering deeply and infrequently instead. Most lawns need about 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week, including any rainfall, delivered in 1 or 2 sessions rather than spread across daily light waterings. That typically means 30 to 45 minutes of sprinkler time per session depending on your system's output, enough to get moisture down 4 to 6 inches into the soil where the active root zone lives. You can check this with something as simple as a screwdriver. Push it into the lawn after watering, and if it slides in easily to that depth, you've watered correctly. If it stops short, you need more time on that zone. Morning is the right time to water, ideally before 9 a.m. Watering early means the moisture has time to soak in before the heat of the day causes heavy evaporation, and the grass blades dry off before evening, which matters because wet grass sitting overnight is exactly the environment fungal disease needs to take hold. Watering in the middle of the day wastes a significant percentage of that water to evaporation before it ever reaches the roots, and watering late at night leaves the lawn wet for hours in the dark, raising disease risk substantially. If your lawn is already showing signs of heat stress, a slightly bluish-gray tint to the grass, blades that fold or curl, or footprints that stay visible long after you've walked across the lawn, that's the plant telling you it needs water now, not in 3 days. Catching that early sign and watering promptly is far better than waiting until the grass has gone fully brown. One more point worth knowing: if your lawn does go brown during a dry stretch despite your best efforts, that's very often dormancy, not death. Cool season grass is built to survive drought by shutting down above-ground growth and protecting the crown at the base of the plant. You can check this yourself. Tug gently on a patch of the brown grass. If it resists and stays rooted, with a pale green and firm crown at the base, it's dormant and will green back up once consistent moisture returns. If it pulls out of the ground easily with no resistance, that's a different problem and needs further investigation, which we'll get into shortly. Whatever fertilizer routine worked in spring needs to be set aside for July. Heavy nitrogen formulas that push fast leafy growth are exactly what you don't want right now, because that kind of rapid growth demands more water and more energy from a plant that's already stretched thin trying to survive the heat. Pushing growth on a heat-stressed lawn is a common way people accidentally burn their grass or weaken it right when it can least afford it. If your lawn is healthy and not currently showing heat stress, a light application using a slow-release, lower nitrogen summer formula is reasonable, and a formula with a higher potassium content specifically helps grass tolerate heat and drought better than a standard spring blend. Potassium supports the plant's internal water regulation, which is exactly the kind of support useful during the hottest weeks of the year. But if your lawn is already stressed, showing color loss, wilting, or that telltale blue-gray tint, the right move is to hold off on fertilizing entirely until temperatures ease and the lawn shows signs of recovery. A stressed plant can't efficiently process nitrogen anyway, so applying it at that point does very little good and carries real risk of burning already struggling grass. If you do fertilize, never apply to dry grass sitting in full sun, and never apply right before a stretch of high heat with no rain or watering planned. Fertilizer needs moisture to move into the soil and activate. Sitting dry on the surface, it can scorch the grass blades it touches. Apply on a cloudy day if possible, or plan to water it in shortly after application. One application during this period, timed correctly, does more good than 2 rushed ones. July is peak season for 2 underground problems that quietly do more damage than the heat itself, and most people don't catch either one until it's already serious. The first is grub activity. Grubs are the larval stage of beetles like Japanese beetles, June bugs, and masked chafers, and depending on your region, this is often the window when adult beetles have laid eggs and the young larvae are actively feeding on grass roots just below the surface. Because the damage happens underground, you usually don't see it until the lawn above starts showing irregular brown patches that don't respond to watering. The way to tell grub damage apart from simple drought stress matters a lot here. Grub-damaged turf feels spongy or loose underfoot, almost like walking on a thin carpet that's not properly attached to the ground. If you grab a handful of the brown grass in an affected patch and tug, it lifts up easily, roots and all, often with little white C-shaped grubs visible in the soil underneath. Drought-stressed grass, by contrast, feels dry and crisp but stays rooted when you pull on it. If you suspect grubs, cut out a small square of turf, about a foot across and a few inches deep, and count what you find. More than 5 to 10 grubs per square foot in that sample generally means treatment is worth doing. For active infestations showing visible damage right now, a curative product is the right call, since preventive treatments applied this late in the season are less effective than they would have been earlier in summer. Always water the product in according to the label, since most of these treatments need to be moved down into the root zone to work. The second underground threat is more of a surface and thatch dweller, chinch bugs. These are tiny insects, barely visible without close inspection, that pierce individual grass blades and feed on the plant's fluids, while injecting a substance that disrupts the grass's ability to move water through its tissue. The result looks almost identical to drought stress: irregular yellow and brown patches, usually starting in the hottest, sunniest parts of the yard, near sidewalks or driveways, where heat reflects back onto the lawn. The giveaway is that watering doesn't fix it. If you've been watering correctly and a patch keeps expanding anyway, especially in full sun areas, chinch bugs are worth ruling out. A simple test. Cut both ends off a coffee can or similar cylinder, press one end firmly into the turf at the edge of a damaged patch, and fill it with water. If chinch bugs are present, they'll float to the surface within a minute or two. Both of these pests share something useful to know. Lush, overwatered, heavily fertilized lawns with soft new growth are more attractive to them. Keeping mowing height correct and avoiding the urge to overfeed or overwater during heat stress doesn't just protect the grass directly, it also makes your lawn a less appealing target in the first place. Heat alone rarely kills a healthy lawn outright, but heat combined with the wrong moisture pattern creates ideal conditions for fungal disease, and July is when this combination shows up most often. Brown patch and similar fungal issues thrive specifically in warm, humid conditions, where grass blades stay wet for extended periods, which is exactly what happens when lawns are watered in the evening or overnight. This is one more reason morning watering matters as much as it does. Grass that dries out within a few hours of sunrise rarely develops fungal problems. Grass that stays damp from dusk until the next morning is far more vulnerable. Fungal disease often gets confused with both drought stress and grub damage at first glance, since all three can produce brown or discolored patches. The distinguishing features of fungal disease usually include a more circular or ring-shaped pattern to the damage, sometimes with a darker, water-soaked looking border around the affected area, especially visible in early morning when dew is present. It tends to show up after a stretch of humid weather or after a period of overwatering, rather than during a dry spell. If you've ruled out drought and grubs and a patch still looks unusual, this is worth considering, and the fix often starts simply with correcting the watering schedule rather than reaching immediately for a fungicide. Reducing nitrogen fertilizer also helps here, since excess nitrogen produces the kind of soft, tender growth that fungal pathogens find easiest to infect. If you've been following the lighter, potassium-focused summer fertilizer approach from earlier, you're already reducing this risk without doing anything extra. A heat-stressed lawn is more vulnerable to physical damage than people usually realize, and a lot of the wear and tear that shows up in July comes from completely normal use of the yard. Foot traffic that the lawn would shrug off in May can leave lingering footprints or thinning patches in July, simply because the grass has less energy available to recover from being compressed or bent. If you notice the same paths getting walked repeatedly, across to a garden, around a pool, near a play area, consider laying down a temporary stepping path or simply varying the route during the hottest weeks to give that strip of grass a chance to recover. The same logic applies to mower tires and any heavy equipment moved across the lawn during peak heat. If you do create visible tire tracks or compressed lines from equipment, a quick watering of that specific area afterward helps it bounce back faster, instead of sitting compressed and stressed until the next watering day. This is also the time to scale back on cultivation tasks that cause temporary damage even when done correctly. Aeration and dethatching both create short-term stress on the lawn as part of how they work, which is fine for a lawn with full energy reserves in spring or fall, but risky for a lawn already running on a deficit in July heat. If you were planning either of those tasks, this is the month to wait. Push them to early fall when the grass has the reserve energy to recover quickly from the disturbance, instead of struggling to recover from heat and disturbance at the same time. None of this requires a complete overhaul of your routine, but it does require a different mindset than the one that worked in June. Raise the mower deck before the next heat wave, not during it, and keep that blade sharp. Switch from frequent shallow watering to 1 or 2 deep sessions a week, done in the early morning, and use a simple screwdriver test to confirm you're actually reaching the root zone. Hold off on heavy fertilizer, and if you do feed the lawn, use a light, potassium-leaning summer formula and only on a lawn that isn't already stressed. Walk your yard this week specifically looking for the warning signs covered here. Spongy turf that suggests grubs, irregular patches in sunny areas that don't respond to water and might be chinch bugs, or ring-shaped damage that points to fungal disease. Catching any of these in the first week or 2 of July gives you a real chance to stop them before they spread. Wait until August to notice them, and you're usually looking at reseeding a section of lawn instead of treating a small problem. And if you see brown grass that simply won't perk up no matter what you try, do the tug test before assuming the worst. Dormant grass that's rooted and protecting its crown will come back. The lawns that survive July in good shape aren't the ones that get watered the most or fertilized the hardest. They're the ones where someone paid attention early, adjusted the routine to match the actual conditions outside, and caught the small problems before the heat had a chance to turn them into big ones.